What a beautiful day at Nigrin Wetland Preserve. Good morning, I'm Mark Luthen. At Nigrin Wetland Preserve, this is Zach Reichen, Director of Stewardship for Natural Land Institute. Working the camera is Kim Johnson, Director of Marketing and Membership for Natural Land Institute. We're looking out here, there's a bald eagle sitting among some great blue herons next to a couple great egrets and a white pelican. What a fine day. Nigrin Wetland Preserve is about a mile and a half west of Rockton, Illinois, the intersection of Rockton and Hansberry Roads. If you're a first-time visitor to Nigrin, you would park in the parking lot just to our north, and walk out to the observation deck that we're on right now. The observation deck does have a viewing scope for your viewing pleasure to check out all the birds that we're looking at right now, and otherwise bring your own binoculars. The observation deck is also the start of the Diane Nora Nature Trail. It's a 2.5-mile loop around the whole wetland, and we'll talk more about the wetland in just a few minutes. It will also lead you to the Anmeyer Prairie Garden, as well as other prairies that NLI has established on this preserve, and oak savannas, and done a lot of restoration work here. So Zach is here to give us some idea of what we might see this fall at the Wildlife Overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of hello to everybody watching at home or at work or wherever you're watching. But a lot of the birds that we're seeing right now we'll continue to see through the fall until the temperatures get really cold, and at that point a lot of the birds who are utilizing the water will be a little bit further south. There's two bald eagles actually in that oak tree, the large kind of oak tree with no leaves out off to the southeast or southwest there. So we'll continue to see birds like that. Birds of prey kind of pick up as a lot of birds of prey kind of migrate through. So bald eagles will stay here most of the winter, like I said, until it gets really cold, and then they don't have any open water that they can fish on or have access to for probably drinking. But other birds of prey like broad-winged hawks, they fly down, I think, as far as Central America, South America. So we'll see them in the fall as they pass through. But probably the big ticket item as far as birds go for migration around here in the fall are the waterfowl like ducks and some of our wading birds too. But ducks like the green-winged teals, we get the canvasbacks and ruddy ducks and all sorts of different kinds of ducks, which until I started looking into birds, I had never heard of these before, and now I've learned to recognize a lot of these, and they're fun to watch, and they're also beautiful birds. So really cool to see them move through in the fall.
And some of the wading birds you've seen obviously are the sandhill cranes. In fact, we have been watching a flock of about 13 out there. We saw 13 fly in, and I guess there were a few more out there. But you'll get hundreds of sandhill cranes out here, won't you?
Yeah, I think our high count is almost 600 sandhill cranes at one time. And growing up, I grew up just along Lake Michigan, about an hour north of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and I never really saw sandhill cranes growing up. And I think until 2009, actually, they were listed as federally endangered species. They were delisted in 2009, and we've seen their numbers returning. And yeah, I think almost 600 cranes at one time out here is a pretty substantial and awesome sight.
It gets kind of raucous too, doesn't it?
Definitely. Between the cranes and the Canada geese that come in the thousands.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, the eagles were making some noise earlier and disrupting the herons while they were fishing. We counted 30 great blue herons this morning just since we've been here, so kind of fun to watch.
Definitely.
You ever get any whooping cranes out here?
Occasionally there have been whooping cranes. So their migration pattern it passes through, and between here and like Pecatonica, little bit further west here in Winnebago County is kind of their main flyway, and we're lucky enough to pick them up when they want to stop over. So we get them in the spring, and then we get them in the fall when they're moving south.
So, other than bird watching, which you seem to be able to get to do on your job a little bit, what are the responsibilities of the Director of Stewardship?
So my position with Natural Land Institute is essentially coordinating our land management and our basically keeping touch with our volunteer base, which helps us get everything accomplished that we've been able to get accomplished in the last few years, especially when we're tackling invasive species threats like all the invasive brush that's choked out a lot of our woodlands. We try our hardest to open the woodlands up and get the sunlight to the ground to allow our ecosystems to flourish, and volunteers are a huge portion of that. I also coordinate the monitoring of conservation easements, which are so that's a way that we work with private landowners to basically make sure that there's good habitat. Even if we don't own it, we can work with private landowners who do, and help them make good decisions as far as land management goes, and also make sure that the wishes of people who have owned those properties in the past are kind of keeping up.
So,
Question. Somebody asked, whooping cranes are a pretty rare sight, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They're one of the rarest birds in the world. They're severely endangered, and their numbers have been teetering on the brink of extinction for the last half century. So.
the question was about whooping cranes. I'm not sure if you heard Kim say that.
Oh, right.
So,
Yeah.
So I thought we should repeat it just in case. So
That's a good point.
they being a rare species, but they are making a comeback with the help of reestablishing habitats, as well as a lot of work done by International Crane Foundation and other organizations like that. So keep those questions coming. I forgot to mention that we'll try and monitor the questions, and if you do have a question, please ask, and we'll certainly try and answer it. Zach, whenever I'm with him, I learn something new. So, knowledgeable guy.
I've learned from you too.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Nygren is a 721-acre preserve. NLI has owned Nygren for 20 years. Approximately how big is a wetland here?
So the wetland that we see when you come to the overlook here off of Rockton Road is about 130 acres. That's this expansive. Right now, it's a water body, and sometimes you'll see more grass growing up. But since we've had high water out here, what you're looking at is about 130 acres, including these willow colonies off to the west.
Okay.
The entire property, of course, yeah, that's 720 acres. So there's upland prairies along some of our trails, and we go all the way down to the Pecatonica and the Rock Rivers.
So take this area and multiply by about 6, and you have the whole preserve.
Essentially, yeah, and that includes some different topography too. It's not all flat like this, but.
Right. And does the water level in the wetlands stay about the same, would you say?
It's funny, our wetlands have fluctuated quite a bit. The past couple of years with the record precipitation, coupled with our rivers not really having time to come down very much, and also beaver activity on our own property has kind of kept water levels high here. In wet areas have seen a lot of water inundation. In fact, there's fish jumping right outside the overlook here. I'm almost trying to see what those guys are. A lot of carp in here and catfish, but that almost looked like a bass. So water levels will fluctuate with precipitation, and that's a big thing with wetlands too. How we define and classify wetlands has a lot to do with how deep the water is, and how long you see water sitting on the surface, and what kind of soils are underneath all that too.
So rain runoff helps fill up this wetland, as well as overflow from the creek. Raccoon Creek is along the southern edge of the wetland.
Yep.
So when Raccoon Creek floods, it fills up the wetland as well.
Yeah, Raccoon Creek, also the Pecatonica River. We're at the bottom of the Pecatonica River drainage basin, That's a very large drainage. It goes all the way up almost to Madison, Wisconsin. So that's a lot of land and that's a lot of water coming down to this point here. Our southeastern corner is where the Pecatonica River meets the Rock River, which is also a really large, significant river in this area. So yeah, 3 streams and several oxbows, which are basically kind of permanent scars left over from where those streams once meandered and then kind of moved away and left this puddle of water, kind of carved out the earth and left standing water. It's an oxbow lake, we call that. And so those will keep surface water all year round, of course, and they influence the standing water that we see here in the wetlands.
So what has NLI done in the past 20 years to, I guess, help maintain the wetland and to make sure it stays a wetland, as well as Raccoon Creek down there?
Yeah, about 20 years ago, when we initially got the property, a big project that our organization kind of took on and got some help with actually getting the earthwork done was to kind of, I know that there was alteration done on some of these oxbows to kind of, change the way that they hold water for longer and have variable depths. So that's super important for all the organisms utilizing them. But also, the big ticket item was Raccoon Creek, which was essentially, it had been channelized, straightened, and made into a ditch by people who were living here for the past century, who were trying to farm this area. And they wanted water to move away as quickly as possible. So the way that they knew to do that was just to make, wherever you had water, you basically make a ditch, you straighten the banks, and it's not good for wildlife and biodiversity in general, but it moves water away very quickly, and they tried then to farm the acreage. So when we got the property, we actually took that straight channel and broke it up, and we basically recreated the meanders that the stream might have had in the past before all that channelization occurred. So
a couple more cranes flying in as we speak. Got 3 out there. I don't know if Kim can get that or not. Sandhill cranes, those are. Channeling, there's 6 more coming in. So,
oh yeah.
They're moving. This is great. Channeling a creek also increases flooding downstream.
You bet.
It diverts the water away from the local area quicker. So meanders are actually good to help control flooding, and wetlands obviously too. This is a huge water reservoir that controls the flooding downstream. So we've talked about some of the birds out here, and I know there's lots of interesting birds that come visit Nygren. What are some of the birds that cranes are joining in our conversation?
Yeah, is that picking up, you think?
Probably.
That's nice. What are some of the more interesting birds that people have seen, or more conservative species?
Sure. Some of the rare species of birds that we talked, we mentioned this, the whooping crane. We didn't have them this year. I don't think. They were in the neighborhood, but they didn't stop here. But we've had other birds too that if you spend a little bit of time learning about what might occur here, or if you talk to experts or people who have been looking at birds in the area for a long time, they can help you learn these more rare species. And one of the ones that we had here this summer was the American avocet. And there's a man, Lee Johnson, who's done a lot at the bird banding facility at Colored Sands Nature Preserve just to our northwest here. He said, I think he had seen American avocets in Winnebago County only 4 times in the last 75 years. So he's got a lot of experience under his belt, and you get the opportunity when you come to a place like this to see rare occurrences like that. So American avocets are a wading bird, and they're a bird. So that's a chicken-sized bird with long, goofy-looking stilt legs that kind of afford it some ability to move around in this relatively shallow water and pick out prey like frogs and snails.
That's kind of a unique bill, if I recall, too, doesn't it?
Yeah, a longer bill.
Longer bill, and kind of, isn't it curved up?
Yeah, it has a bit of a curve up, and yeah, goofy birds like curlews, long-billed curlews have a really goofy looking downturn bill. And yeah, so we get all kinds of some odd critters pass through, and getting a chance to see those has been a really great experience.
So if you come, bring a bird book
Mm.
and binoculars, or use our viewing scope. Is
Definitely.
there another question?
Well, just a couple of comments. Hannah McCullough said, I hear the Sandhill Cranes.
Oh,
She
great.
heard them. And then Jessica Mino said, Mr. Luthen, rock star for wildlife in our region.
Well, I think Zach is a rock star, but thank you for saying that. But we're glad you can hear the Sandhill Cranes as well.
Yeah, I'm glad it's picking up.
Much better to listen to than the two of us speaking. I think. So other wildlife out here besides the birds that we might see at the wetland?
None, zero. Yeah,
None?
it's just a desert. No, there's so much. There's so much wildlife that occurs here. It's such a, I mean, it's a relatively large piece of property, and then on top of that, there's a lot of land around here that's protected. So you get a chance to see essentially any wetland mammal that you could think of, any mammal that would swim in the water. You have a chance to see on this property, like beaver. There's otters, which are pretty cool. There's mink. There's muskrat. Just a ton of diversity all over the place. So if you're interested in, insects, if you're looking at butterflies and bees, this place is buzzing, and there's so many things on the wing right now. And that's, that's another really cool, facet of the animal kingdom to come and take a look at here.
So as far as we talked about bird migrants a little bit, and there's obviously many more that we don't have time to discuss today, but are there other species that might migrate through this area? Insects or things like that? Or
Yeah, well, I was thinking of, like other animals that migrate through, and the big one around here and very recognizable is the monarch butterfly. The monarch overwinters in Mexico and then spends multiple generations getting this far north in a given growing season. So even in the same summer, you have multiple generations moving this far north. And then they get about this far north or even up into Ontario and Canada, and we see them passing through. So in the fall, you'll see monarch butterflies, the big orange, obvious butterflies flying through. And that one single butterfly has to make it all the way back down to Mexico. So pieces of habitat like this are critical for that migration for sure.
Okay. And obviously a lot of insects call this place home, and they would overwinter in the prairie areas or the woodland areas as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, most of the insect life that you see, they need one particular plant usually or a particular situation to overwinter in, as an egg, as a caterpillar, or maybe as an adult. But yeah, so many places to kind of hide out for sure.
Sorry, I got distracted by a bald eagle harassing some egrets.
Oh yeah.
Kim, another question.
Comment. Hannah must have been here yesterday because she said frogs were absolutely everywhere yesterday afternoon. So I have a question. What kind of frogs can you see out here when you come to the overlook?
Okay, the question is about frogs. What type of frogs might we see out here? Frogs and toads. We had a viewer that was out here yesterday and saw lots of frogs. So Hannah was out here.
Yeah, so there's many different kinds of frogs, most of which are completely quiet this time of year. Their calls have all kind of tapered off. You hear different frog calls earlier in the season, and you might hear a tree frog calling, and tree frogs have a really kind of melodic trill, or there's another kind of, that's the gray tree frog, and then the Cope's tree frog has like more of a hoarse trill, and they'll be calling in the trees, so you'll hear odd, loud blasts of noise coming from, in the trees basically, and those are the tree frogs. But if you're walking, a lot of times you'll see leopard frogs, and leopard frogs have a lot of different color patterns to them, and they'll flash, right at your ankles as you're walking, which is always kind of cool. You might see bullfrogs or green frogs hanging out on the banks of water like this. And just like a month ago, or maybe a month and a half, it's just a cacophony in the evenings of bullfrog calls. It's it's a pretty cool place, and frogs are a really unique part of our wildlife spectrum.
So speaking of amphibians, are there salamanders that might call this place home?
You know, we've been looking for salamanders, and we're always kind of actively taking a peek under logs and that sort of thing to see if we can locate them. You know, so far on this property, we don't have any documentation of salamanders, like the tiger salamander, the blue spotted, or yellow spotted or spotted salamanders. Not too far off the property here, we get a little bit closer to the Sugar River, and the Sugar River has a lot of influence, just like the Pecatonica and the Rock. And it seems like the salamander diversity kind of picks back up. Yeah.
So we need a flood from the sugar and
I mean,
some salamanders in here. So.
yeah, that could very well, you know, yeah, maybe take some of their young, which look a lot like frog tadpoles. They have tadpoles too, and I mean, theoretically, a big flood could move them around.
So we're getting the wind-up sign here. Just a couple quick questions. First of all, there's one lone white pelican out there, and I've seen pelicans all summer long. Do they call this place home typically, or?
So last few years we've been able to see pelicans from the overlook essentially all summer long. They don't necessarily breed here. They breed a little bit further north in Wisconsin, but here we get the non-breeders. We have juveniles and non-breeding adults, and it looks like, yeah, just the one today, right?
He's kind of a dirty one.
Yeah.
He or she. So okay. So you mentioned birds, and I know you have an app that you like to use. If people are out here, can they use that app to enter the birds that they've seen?
Yeah, definitely. And we highly encourage people who visit Nygren Wetland Preserve or any of our preserves or any preserve in general to try to find that on eBird. eBird is it's a website. It's hosted by Cornell University, I believe, and they have an app, and you can get that. Even if you don't have the app, you can still pull it up on your smartphone and get the website and enter your observations like that. But essentially, any bird that you see, there's a checklist. You know, you would have the site name. You find the site, then you enter your observations, and all it is a checkbox. So, however many blue jays or ruddy ducks or sandhill cranes you saw that day, you would enter that information. There's a spot for if you had pictures or audio recordings, you can stick that in there. And that sort of information is really important for us, actually, because it affords us I guess it gives us a better picture of what is occurring here. Perhaps, you know, the last few years, we've had a lot of earlier and earlier observations in the spring. So actually eBird, the way that they have their system set up is that if you have an observation that's unique or kind of seems a little bit off, they have a way of, you know, checking into that. You know, they ask for a little bit more evidence, or so there's people kind of keeping tabs on this information. Now, that information is available then to us. We can look at, you know, flow charts across the season, and I was looking at that before this interview just to see, you know, what kind of, you can see if you look at the bar chart for all the species here, you can see, you know, they give you the year, you know, January through December, and you can see, you know, blips in the spring and blips in the fall, and that's the migration. Those are the birds that are migrating. And then you have blips all across the x-axis, and that's the birds that are here all year round. Okay. And the more data that we are able to enter into that system, the better the product is going to be. And I think when it first started, you know, when people first started using this stuff, what I mean to say is, I guess the information gets better and better as we continue to populate that data. So I highly encourage you all to check out eBird, and please use it when you come out.
So, 2 quick questions. Best time of day to come watch the wildlife, and best time of year if they want to see some of the fall migration coming up, or spring, obviously.
Sure. Definitely in the morning, you know, at sunrise, or until, you know, before noon, And then in the evenings, anytime between like 4 o'clock and sunset, you're going to start to see more birds either take off in the morning, or maybe even come in the morning, as we've been seeing this morning with the sandhill cranes. But in the evening, birds are coming in to roost up for the night, and that's when you can really see a lot of the numbers that we were talking about, the hundreds of cranes and thousands of geese. In the coming up in the fall, I would really recommend to kind of get peak migration for a lot of our birds, at least, coming like early October. So that's what the data has shown, and that's also a really pleasant time to be out here because the temperatures are great, and mosquitoes are nearly non-existent. They're still out, but not in the numbers that they were a month ago.
And we encourage physical distancing on our observation deck. You'll notice that Zach and I are trying to be close to 6 feet apart here. So, and there is a sign that says, I think, 3 people per deck. So try and keep that in mind while you're out here. Take turns. And then how would a person, you mentioned volunteers helping out, and I know we have, 26 preserves, and that's a lot for 3 staff members. So if people want to get involved in volunteering with some of the restoration work, what would they do?
Yeah, all you got to do is reach out to our office. I know that just recently, this last week or two, we've had more people reach out about volunteering for stewardship work days and that sort of thing, and I still need to get in touch with those folks. So if you're listening out there, hang on, I'm getting to that, and we definitely have tasks that we can kind of dole out right now that don't involve being really close to other people. So the coronavirus, the COVID-19 being what it is, it's kind of taken a toll on our regularly scheduled programming, so to speak, as far as just our normally scheduled work days. We've been we haven't really gone the extra step of reinstating our normally scheduled work days because we don't want to put people at a higher risk, I guess. But we do have tasks that we can work with as far as, maybe 1 or 2 people who are interested in a particular site coming out on their own time. That can certainly be accommodated. So I recommend reaching out to either info@naturalland.org, which is our email address, or you could look my info up on our website. My name is Zach Greichen, and you can call my cell or email me, and we can get you hooked up.
And Eric Anderson says he's itching to get back to the Milan Bottoms to do some work. Can you mention Eric Anderson?
Oh, yeah. Do you know Eric?
I want to talk about Eric.
I don't think I do.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for reaching out. Milan Bottoms is another site of. We own the property over in Milan, which is Rock Island County, over along the Mississippi River. And actually, our restoration ecologist Tyler Pellegrini will be headed out there. I think either late this week, or early next week. So we'll have him get in touch. Thanks.
And Trisha Graham says hi. She was our bluebird monitor for 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Hi, Trisha. Thanks for doing an awesome job last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. Okay, so we're going to wrap things up. We will have some more Facebook Live events in the future in September. We don't have a subject yet, but pay attention to Facebook or the Natural Land website, Natural Land Institute website. Zach and I, right now, thank you for watching, but we have work to do. Okay? So,
Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Take care.